Today's session is navigating change, and it is very much a 101 guide to change management. This session really came about after I watched the AI session at the end of last year, and I really liked what the Scribe Academy was doing in relation to building a community. But it also made me think about change and all of the changes that are kind of around us at the moment, what we're all experiencing, but also how we can make the most of those changes as well. So as I've said, I'm Julia, I work at Reddenpool with Harston Town Council, and I've had a bit of a squiggly career to get where I am today, but I've only worked in local government for about a year, and prior to that, as John has already mentioned, I've worked in the public sector as a change lead and a change manager, and most recently at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. I'm a qualified change manager, programme manager, and also an agile change coach as well. So I've been really fortunate to work on some really exciting global change projects and programmes and building lots of experience within this field. Today, as I'm sure you'll understand, for confidentiality reasons, I won't be talking about particular programmes and projects, but I will bring examples that we've kind of all experienced in our working lives that will hopefully bring some of this to life as well. And there does seem to be a huge amount of change. There's sort of larger environmental changes and the impacts on our communities. We have digital changes, as I mentioned already, with AI, but that continued shift towards digital ways of working and cloud-based ways of working as well, and with that, cybersecurity. And then also, for us, the English Devolution White Paper and everything that sets out and the reforms that it may bring. So where possible, ideally we want to be proactively looking forward. Where can we influence? Where can we control? How can we keep improving and developing to serve our communities? In today's session, I'm going to be focusing on why understanding change and change management matters, why it's really difficult from an individual perspective, and how you can use these principles with changes that you may want to make. And I'm going to be doing a lot of exercises as well, kind of personal reflection exercises. We are really tight on time. I've put a lot of content in here and I hope you find it useful. But maybe as we go through, if you could add any comments to the chat, either on personal reflection exercises, any questions you may have, that would be really useful. And then right at the end, we have a Q&A section, and hopefully I can bring in some of those and we have time to discuss that in a bit more detail. So, onwards. First of all, I'd like you to all do a little bit of an exercise. So, hopefully you've got a pen and paper to hand. Do you write with your right hand or your left hand? So now I want you to change that. From now, I want you to write with your other hand. So grab that pen and paper and write your name down, and perhaps your address, with your non-writing hand. Okay. So I suppose, what was the first question that popped into your mind, and how did it make you feel? You can pop your comments in the chat if you'd like to, but I can imagine that you're thinking, why on earth is she asking me to do this? Why should I make this change? Actually, it made me feel really awkward and uncomfortable, and it wasn't very nice, to be honest. I suppose the aim of this exercise is to highlight how we feel when we're being made to change something without understanding the reason, the why. And you'll notice all the way through this presentation today, I keep talking about the why, and it is so very important. The heart of change is in the emotions. We need to provide that clear journey to reduce that resistance to the change. And as William Bridges notes here, another change expert, much as we may wish to make a new beginning and a change, some part of us resists, doing so as though we were making the first step towards disaster. But why is this? And this is taking us on to our first model. I've only got 3 models, but all 3 models are ones I've used time and time again for all the projects and programs I've worked on. They're a really useful touchstone, and this is a really key one. The change curve, or transition curve as it's sometimes known, was developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was observing people coping with death and bereavement. And this model offers invaluable insights into all change. And there are lots of changes in our lives, small and big, but all worthy of acknowledging within this curve, because change impacts us. So what is this path or journey that many of us go on when we experience change? So the main stages are, the first one is that shock and denial. To start with, people are really shocked. They resist engaging with the change. It's not happening, it's not going to happen. And this is that kind of real head in the sand moment that you need to work with people through. The second stage is the sort of anger and that frustration and blame. As the reality of the change starts to set in, many people feel an anger and a frustration, and they'll often blame others as well, senior leaders, managers. Empathy and active listening is really important in this stage of the change curve. On to the next stage, and here they may start bargaining or blaming themselves, in fact. They're trying to minimize the change to themselves. Here, offering opportunities to discuss with peers and also participate in the planning can be really helpful. Our next stage is depression, sadness, and confusion as well. Here, they're starting to realise that we need to let go of those old ways of working, and it can lead to those feelings of sadness. You are letting go of something before you can move forward. And again, active listening, that peer-to-peer support, and those structures can really help people at this stage within change. And then as we move forward into acceptance and problem solving, and later meaning as well. So here, individuals can start engaging with that new reality. They've let go of the old ways of working and they're moving into the new reality. Here they'll start looking at ways to make this change work for them as well. And it involves a lot of problem solving. By understanding and acknowledging this change curve and those steps, we can support others and ourselves through change. And we can plan for resistance, because no matter what happens in change management, people will resist, and it goes hand in hand. And often, if we think about our own experience of change, we resist as well quite often. But some key points to really remember with the change curve is that these stages are a normal human process. They are not strictly linear either. People will move through this curve many times. And the time it takes varies from person to person, and also the type of change. Different changes impact people differently. And I would say don't take it personally or lightly. It can be hard, but people are working through things. So, our next exercise, a bit of a personal reflection exercise. I'd like you to have a think about a time you've experienced a change. It can be professional or personal. And consider each step of the change curve and your reactions. I thought we'd just have about 3 minutes on this, so I'll set my timer. And so if you can grab a pen and paper and just have a think about your experiences with the change and this change curve. Okay, I'm going to start bringing you back into the room now, as it were. I hope you found that useful, and please do pop any comments in the chat about how you felt about that exercise, and as I said, we can perhaps get a time to discuss that at the end as well. So on to the next slide. So as Julia Lindon notes, I think really importantly here, change is an event, but a transition is the process that you go through in response to that change. We keep talking about journeys through this, and I think that's really important, the why and that journey. So we all go through a journey when we experience and respond to change, even when it's something we want or it's something that's imposed upon us. And I think there are two types of change to consider here as well. We have the tangible change, so that's what the project is delivering. It's the new app, it's the new tool, it's AI, whatever it might be. And we've also got the behavioural change. So that's the journey that we as individuals undertake in response to that tangible change. It's where we decide to forget and forego the old ways of working, those old habits, and begin adopting and embedding new ways of working. To explore this in a bit more detail, I find this next model really useful, and alongside that change curve, it can be really good as well. So this is the 4 stages of competence, and I'm sure you've come across this many times before. So the first stage is that unconsciously incompetent. I don't know what I don't know. Before learning a new skill, people don't know what they don't know. And I'm going to use an example here of pottery. So I know I'd like to look at a pottery vase. I think, well, that looks amazing. I'd like to be able to do that. But at this stage, I have absolutely no idea what I don't know. I'm unaware of the skill and I'm really inexperienced. And perhaps I go and do a pottery course. And this is when I start becoming consciously incompetent. I now know what I don't know. I have an awareness of the incompetence which starts to build as I'm going to more lessons in pottery. And I also start to realise I might fail. So I've got to learn how to wedge the clay first. I've got to learn how to turn on the wheel before I can even throw it. I need to learn how to centre the clay. And to be honest with you, the first few pots are absolutely terrible. I'm realising I might fail. And this is a really uncomfortable place to be, like the first exercise with our handwriting. And this is where resistance can build. The old ways of working were better. It was easier for me to hand build a pot. I don't need to throw a pot on a wheel. But this is where training plans are really useful. Can you show me how it works? This is where a teacher will come in, show people how it's worked. How can you throw a pot? Listen, train, and coach is really important here as people move through this stage. And then on to consciously competent. I grow and know, and it starts to show. Improvement and repeated practice, leading to developing competence. But effort is still required. I still have to feel like, have I centered the clay properly on the wheel? Have I got the right thickness as I try to build my pot up on that wheel? So I still have to think through the new skill that I'm learning. So effort is still required. But the more I practice, the more I keep trying, the more I'm getting coached. I slowly become unconsciously competent, or mastery. This is where expertise is achieved, and I'm performing the task without conscious thought, and it comes with that practice and experience. So I can now throw a pot without really thinking about it. I can throw hundreds if I wanted to. I can execute this skill naturally. And perhaps even I'm teaching people how to use this skill. So in terms of change and change manager, the role involves helping somebody know what they don't know. It is showing them the blind spots. It is supporting them with training plans and those support structures which run alongside your deliverables for this very reason. Learning a new skill is hard, and we must plan time for this to reduce resistance and deliver the changes we want to seek. So I've got another little sort of reflection exercise. So here, again, thinking about the change you noted down earlier, or perhaps a different one, consider your reactions to those 4 stages of competence. How did you feel when you were trying to learn a new skill and a change? Again, I will pop a little sort of 3-minute timer on. And if you have any comments, do pop them in the chat, and hopefully we can come back to them at the end. Okay, I think I'm going to bring us back to the room now as well. So I hope you found that exercise useful. And so with this and the change curve, how can we help people through change? So change comes more from managing the journey than announcing the destination. As I said already, you'll hear me keep talking about journeys and the whys. So yes, I could announce that as of tomorrow, we'll be delivering a new website. But what does that mean? You know, what are people feeling when you say, oh, tomorrow we're going to be delivering a new website? You've got to show them that journey, show them the way, via that why, the how, the where, and the when. And most importantly, what it means for them. So how can we scale this? So by understanding the individual change, we can develop our knowledge and plan for larger changes. ProSite is a really fantastic change management provider, and I definitely recommend looking at their website. They have lots of tools, articles and information on their models of change, which I find really useful, but also on change management more generally as well. So ProSci notes that large-scale change initiatives require that individual change. That's why understanding individual change really helps with larger initiatives. And as I said, I often use this model by ProSci to help me plan change management pieces for projects and programs, as it incorporates all of the areas we've been already discussing. So we have awareness, we have desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement, ADKAR. And it's very much that journey for change. We're going to look at this in a little bit more detail as well. Hopefully you can all see that okay. So I've taken this from their website. And I'm going to use a pretend example. It's quite small, but hopefully it will give you the idea. So the example is going to be a new report template. So to ensure success, firstly, we need to build awareness of the change. What you'll want to be hearing at this point, or once you've gone through the awareness part, is I understand why. I understand why we need this change. I understand why now, and I also understand what happens if we don't. So this is your clear vision for change, the why. And this is where you'll be doing a lot of communication and storytelling. Remember as well, when you come to sort of running a change management project program, you know all about the change. You have already experienced it and taken your steps on that change journey. Other people haven't. So take steps back yourself and take them with you right from the beginning again. So if we use our current example of that report template. So currently we have a report template and it's in PowerPoint. Every day, we're trying to complete this template so we can create impactful and informative reports. But it's been highlighted through feedback that it's not as informative as we'd hoped. Titles are too vague, information is hard to get at, and it's hard to put a lot of text onto a slide. By creating this new report template with the team, we will have a template in Word that will provide an easy-to-use structure, creating a report with impact and information that will help our readers make informed decisions. And we aim to do this by April. So that's kind of an example of a story, very, very basic example of a storytelling piece where you can start to build that awareness. I understand the why and the why now. We then move on to the next stage, which is desire. So this is the part where people hopefully start to support the change. I have decided to support this change. I understand what is in it for me, and the personal motivations and those organisational ones as well. At this stage, they haven't stopped the old way of working, but they may be considering what the change means for them. What's in it for me? So if we think about the report example, at this stage, you may have finalised a template, but often where I can in this stage, you find it really useful to build desire and buy-in when I seek feedback. So here's a draft template, and here's an opportunity to keep improving it. People who are using it on a day-to-day basis will know what would be really useful in that report template. So seeking feedback to build buy-in. This change is therefore not being done to them, but they are actively engaged. And it helps again with that change curve. I can see what's in it for me. I found it difficult in the past to fit all of the information I wanted onto that PowerPoint slide. I spent a lot of time trying to add it all into PowerPoint and messing around with it. And this is going to make it easier for me and the team to save time. If you have been able to make tweaks based on that feedback, show them where you've made those tweaks. It shows you've listened and you've addressed their concerns. Also in this stage, sometimes testing the template, the ideas, and also your assumptions are really important. Always test your assumptions. But as a word of warning, don't promise things you can't deliver. Listen, take ideas away for consideration, Come back and explain what you have been able to do and what you haven't and why. This all helps desire. It aims at reducing resistance. And my mantra always is under promise, over deliver. With knowledge as the next stage, this is where you start building the knowledge on the change. So this is where the 4 stages of competence can be really helpful. You're moving people from where they are now to where they're going to be. And you're trying to remove those obstacles and showing them the path, like we saw in the video earlier. Here, they know how to. I know how to fill in this report template. And that's where that training program built in right from the start can be really helpful. So the new report will be used in a month's time. And we're going to continue using the old template for the next month. But we've set up some training for us so that you know what to do in a month's time. And we can try the template, we can test it out. One-to-one sessions are always really helpful as well if you can achieve that, because people can ask questions that they might not feel comfortable asking in a group. And again, if you can, always use this opportunity in these training sessions, one-to-one sessions, to keep getting feedback and, if possible, tweak where you can, ready for launch. I think building a continuous improvement mindset really helps. Ideally, you're not just delivering a product one and done, but developing a culture of continuous improvement. Small incremental changes are ultimately easier, those small improvements, than a huge change program. Next, we move on to ability. So this is where people are actually now doing the change. We're a month on, people are using the new template. They know why. They know they want to use this template and they know how to use the template, but they're building their ability. So again, in the 4 stages of competence, they're probably consciously incompetent at this stage. They're learning, they're still trying it. And this is where coaching and practice is really essential. There's going to be challenges. Things might not run as smoothly as you hoped. Keep seeking feedback, I would say. With our example, it would be really useful to keep checking with people about the reports, see where the barriers and issues are, but also the benefits. Again, one-to-one coaching really helps them with their capability here. And then on the last stage, we have reinforcement. So this is where the change sticks. That's what you're aiming for. People continue to work within the new ways of working. However, do not pack up shop yet. Sometimes people will fall back into sort of the old ways of working, old habits. So it's not a one and done, next I've done a really good job, pat myself on the back, carry on. You need to build in that reinforcement to ensure that the change is sustained. So this could include things in relation to our example of periodic checks on the reports, continued two-way feedback, but talk about the successes, discuss that positive feedback, talk about the challenges and address them, continue to build confidence to reinforce those new ways of working and celebrate success to keep improving. So, I have spoken about planning quite a lot in this, sort of planning training, etc., etc. So my next slide is all about kind of planning the change. So I can't emphasize this enough. Take the time to plan and you will reap rewards for it. I'm not suggesting a huge 50-page project plan documentation. I mean, you can if you'd like to, but even a one-page plan is really useful. Asking a few key questions to help you think through, how am I going to approach this change or this deliverable? I acknowledge the importance for large plans in bigger programs, but also I understand the needs for plans to be pragmatic and easy to use, suiting the scale of the work. But do plan. And this outline can hopefully help you with kind of project planning and also embedding some of those change things that we've been talking about. What I would suggest is look on Google as well. there's so many really useful templates for project planning and change planning, one-page plans. So definitely have a look on Google and things for a plan that would suit you. But these are the key questions that I would always ask myself when I first think about planning. So the first one is, what is the vision for change and why are we doing this? As we've spoken about many, many times, the why is really, really important for so many reasons. Why now? What if we don't? And also, what does success look like? And it builds into that awareness and desire piece that we've been talking about. Who does this change impact? So who are our stakeholders? Who may need to change an aspect of their work because of this? Who uses the service? Who will get inquiries? The impact is going to be very different for different groups. And take your time here as well. Really think through all of the potential stakeholders. It can sometimes feel very scary, but really think about them all, because you may need to emphasize different points of your vision for change to different groups. Which leads me on to that communication. So how are we going to communicate? What will we communicate, when and how? And this is where considering the ADKAR model will help with each step. For example, I wouldn't talk about the details of a new system right from the beginning. I wouldn't go, oh, you need to fill in this report template like this, because you haven't taken people on the journey. You've just announced the destination. You'd want to build that awareness. So you'd start with the vision for that report, like we've already mentioned. You also need to know about or think about how you're communicating and your audience and the different ways that people like to seek information, some through perhaps short videos, others through sort of longer reading materials. Have a think about that when you're thinking through communication. The next one I like to think about, and it's really important, is how will we track our progress? How are we going to ensure that people are on this change journey with us, and actually they're not just ignoring us, they're not kind of in the denial part. We are actually working through the change and delivering the project as we hoped. How are we also going to know when adjustments need to be made? Seeking feedback, focus groups, pulse surveys and check-ins are really important here. And ideally, one-to-one conversations. Think about key indicators. If we're thinking about our training plan, think about how many people are taking part in training, the workshops. What type of questions are they asking us? And then at the end, sort of what happens next? So how do we know when we are done? How does the change become business as usual? What do we need to do to ensure that it sticks? Who's going to own the change or the business as usual deliverable? And who will ensure it continues to be successful? I've got another kind of personal reflection exercise. If you could have a think about a change that you are looking to start, or perhaps have already started, and use this ADKAR model to note down each of the stages that you want to do to bring people on that journey with you. So have a think about a change that you are looking to start, or perhaps have already started, and consider this alongside the ADKAR model. I'll just give us another three minutes just as a starter. And again, pop any comments in the chat. Thank you. So I'm just going to slowly bring you back into the room for the next section. So we've talked about a lot of models for change, journeys, and also planning. But I also wanted to touch on some sort of key skills that I've found useful over the years in change. And I've kind of built on these key skills. And I feel whenever I talk about change, these are the ones that I always go back to. And they're also, as you can see, generalist skills. These are skills that we all have as sort of like day-to-day working as well. I mean, there are lots of professional qualifications and there's a huge amount of information online, really useful books. There's been some great comments today about different books that are really useful when contemplating change management. But these foundational skills have really helped me in my change work. And Everyone has these, so they're not scary. There's also a really useful website called Amazing If. They talk about squiggly careers, but they also have an incredible range of skills pieces. So they'll do podcasts, and they've got little one-page help sheets to help you in developing these skills. So if there's one or there's some skills that you're thinking, oh, I need to develop in that area, I definitely recommend having a look at Amazing If. So the first skill that I think is really important with change is active listening. So there's a great question by Stephen Covey, who's also done a lot of work on his model of influence and control, which is worth looking at. But he says, are you listening with the intention to understand, or are you listening with the intention to respond? And it is really hard to do this, but check in with yourself sometimes when you're listening. Are you just waiting to tell them what you think, to give them the solution? This is a really important skill for change, and especially for that change curve as well. The next one, which kind of leads in from active listening actually, is coaching. So that ability to ask intentional questions, for somebody to think through the issue, the feelings, and it can be a really impactful way of working, especially in particular stages of the competence model. So with coaching, you are not trying to solve the problems, and you can use it really carefully as you work through the change. Storytelling. So I've talked a lot about the journey, taking people through storytelling and communication with that why. Our brains are programmed for stories rather than abstract ideas. Tales with a bit of drama stick much more than lots of slides with analytics. And I've often used what's known as the Pixar method to help me think about my storytelling. So once upon a time there was, every day, one day, because of that, until finally. And actually, I did use this earlier when I was thinking through our example of the report. And you will need to emphasize points for different groups and different people, like we were talking about with our stakeholders. If you are talking to a finance group potentially about your change, you may want to emphasize the story, talking about the financial implications. The tech might be secondary to that group. With an HR team, it might be that focus on the impact of people. These are kind of really basic ideas, but emphasizing points for your audience will really help them engage with the change. And then the last one is the ability to adapt and be agile. Change doesn't always go to plan. People will resist. We've talked a lot about kind of planning for that resistance as well. It happens. And in the past, I have been tested, but the ability to listen, learn, and adapt is really key. But ultimately, change is really, really rewarding. So just as a last kind of exercise, I just thought it'd be useful to think about that storytelling piece. So if you think about the change that you were contemplating earlier, and just very quickly write up a once upon a time there was your change. Every day something happened. One day because of that, until finally. So have a think about your change and write it up using this sort of Pixar method. Okay, I'm going to slowly bring you back into the room. As a last kind of, got a couple more slides, have a quick think about sort of 3 things you're going to take away today, and maybe what you're going to do as well. But as part of a quick overview, I would say that acknowledging the importance of individual change and that individual change journey is really, really important. Certainly listen and coach where appropriate. We learn best and change from hearing the stories that strike a chord with us. Outline the path and remove those obstacles. Plan for resistance, and ultimately reinforce the new ways of working and celebrate success.